The biggest one for us, the only one that's available, all we've got left is the title, is still there. And I wanted to just talk to you about it in the bigger scheme of things before we look at West Ham, like we always do, narrow our focus down a bit, maybe talk about Arsenal as well, just in this regard. And, Liverpool's fixtures, you mentioned the comparatively winnable games coming up. We've got West Ham on Sunday, and that's a home game. And then it's Sunday. The one after that is Leicester away and then Tottenham at home. And we go away then to Chelsea. And I have a feeling, Jan, I could be wrong, but as you look at the Arsenal fixtures, it's after going so well for them there now that I think they're going to be fine. The Brentford game, I don't know if it's going to be a massive deal for them to have to change things up too much. It probably changes very much that wonderful win they had last night at home to Real Madrid, ahead of their game against Real in Madrid on the 16th. But after that, they have Ipswich Town some 4 days later on the 20th. I can't see that presenting too much of a challenge. If they get past Real, however, then a semi starts to loom, and that gets right into everyone's brain. I don't care what anyone says. I think that will massively affect Arsenal, and they will have Palace and Bournemouth and ourselves ahead of them there. In terms of the next 3 games, because I keep trying to think, when can we potentially get this done? If we just assume that Liverpool will sort of default to some sort of version of themselves and say that, they should be 3 wins against West Ham, against Leicester, and against a Tottenham team who will have eyes on a different prize. Do you see it maybe being done before we're even expecting it, before the 11 points that are currently needed are actually needed to get racked up, because maybe Arsenal might drop a couple elsewhere themselves with their eyes on a different competition? How are you feeling about that, and when you think it might get done?
Well, if you look at what Arsenal did last weekend against Everton, where he rotated because of the enormity of the quarterfinal against Real Madrid, I can see him doing the same at the weekend against Brentford. I thought Brentford last away game at Newcastle when they lost 2-1. I thought they were really unlucky. I think they deserved to win the game. When you play Brentford, you have to be at it because they play with a lot of energy. They put you under a lot of pressure. And I just think that Mikel Arteta is kind of let his players and his fans know that we're going all in for the Champions League. We're going to take risk in the Premier League. We're obviously nobody hands anyone anything in it, but we're going to be resting players because this is our season now, isn't it? So I said it last time, Trevor. It wouldn't surprise me if it might get done against Spurs at home. I would prefer to win it at Anfield. West Ham and Leicester should be pretty straightforward. And Spurs are not in great shape, so I can assure you of that. I just think that Arsenal have got a couple of games. You mentioned Palace and Bournemouth. They're not easy games either, are they? So possibly, Trevor, at the end of the month, who knows? Who knows, Trevor?
I mean, I'll take a showdown with Arsenal as a kind of a cup final to win it every day of the week, and I think a lot of people would. It'd be quite an exciting thing to have, but it would be lovely to think it might be done earlier because they might.
Are you after revenge, Trevor?
I'm a terribly
1989.
small. Yes, man, I'm a terribly small-minded man. That comes back to my head straight away. First thing I thought about was like those bastards. That was one of the worst evenings of my young life, and it reminds me of a question I meant to ask you earlier on. So I'm watching Arsenal Real Madrid last night for my sins. I don't know why I did it to myself. And you gotta just take your hat off to those incredible strikes. You must have been there thinking, wow, that's just that. They were gorgeous. They were just gorgeously hit, beautifully struck balls. And they did get the third goal, so we can't just say it's just about the free kicks. That Marino goal is a good goal. It's a good team goal. I will tell you my honest reaction as I'm watching that. I was like, oh God, not them! Please, not them! I won't even hide it. The thoughts of any other English team, Premier League team, doing well in the Champions League, I'm not a big enough man to say good luck to them. it eats me alive, Jan, to see them do well. I'll be honest, but I don't know. Have you managed to maintain a bit more of a professional distance? Can you? I know, because like it's what you do. You watch games. You talk about these games for a living. Have you managed to get that little bit of a distance where you can go, oh, good for them, I guess, because I'm not capable of it.
I quite like English teams in the Champions League, Trevor, because it makes my job so much easier. It makes my job so much easier. Most of the games will be pretty local. I know more about Premier League teams than I do about teams from the Bundesliga or Serie A or La Liga, whatever. So here's one question for you, Trevor. How do you feel then with Arsenal beating Real Madrid? That then guaranteed England 5 places in next year's Champions League. How do you feel about that then? Another English club gets to play in, I guess, what you call Liverpool's competition.
That part of it doesn't bother me at all. And if you want small-mindedness, let me lay this one. You're going to love this, because if you thought my attitude there was incredibly small-minded, when I heard about this, I was thinking, wouldn't it be fucking marvelous if we did get 5 and City missed out? Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Well, surely you can see that, can't you?
I mean, Benfica.
I can see that. Trevor,
I can see that.
Did you watch the whole of the game on Sunday?
Yeah.
Man United, Man City.
Yeah.
After Liverpool. I mean, fair enough to be disappointed with Manchester United, but they've had a terrible season, haven't they? But City, to play the way that they did, with no energy, with no intensity, the game's about scoring goals, and I'm not so sure, Trevor. I'm not sure I'm not sure they got enough. I just look at that team and I'm thinking, wow, Bernardo Silva, Kevin de Bruyne, or whatever, There's another thing that I wanted to say that before about Trent. Do you think there's a difference with Kevin de Bruyne has come out and said, I'm going? Or do you think that's a different situation because the club haven't offered him a deal and it's easy for him to say, well, I'm going? Whereas you said before, the biggest mystery with Trent is the silence.
I think it was put in stark contrast. The two things were put in contrast with each other, and there was a lot of narrative around the fact, well, here's a classy individual doing the classy thing. Yeah. And I'm reluctant to hammer any footballer when they're just, if you get a chance to grab the bag, and you guys from your generation must think about this all the time, with sort of just shaking your heads thinking, Jesus Christ, like the life-changing money these boys are on. It's very hard to judge a guy for making a decision like that. I will say there must have been some way of handling his communication, his contribution to this Real Madrid fiasco, which would have been a lot more respectful of the fans. That's what I would say, Jan. Do you think is that unfair? No,
I think that's about right, isn't it? And I also think that there is obviously certain things that disappoint fans, isn't it? He scored. Was it at West Ham? He scored the goal where he put his finger up to his mouth, and you kind of go, well, who was that aimed at? Was that aimed at the media speculating, pundits talking on TV or whatever? But it's difficult, isn't it? Because all we've done now for 8 months is guess, isn't it? We guess. We get very little to go on.